This session is about words that have something to do with numbers, and this is actually probably my favourite of all of our vocabulary topics because you find out all these new things, you figure out words that you didn't even know related to numbers, and then you can use the number prefixes to figure out the meanings of new words even when you've never heard them before. So I think it's really cool. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Let's get into our first set of numbers, and I've got some clues for you so you can figure out some numerical prefixes yourself. Okay, so you can see on the left here we've got a list of numbers, and on the right we have the Latin prefixes that go with those numbers. Now I reckon you'll be able to figure out some of these. I've got some picture clues to help you as well, so let's look at the picture clues and then come back to this screen. First up, all of these words relate to the number 1. So we have a unicycle, we have a unicorn. I won't write that down, hopefully you know how to spell it. In the bottom right corner, we have the board game Monopoly. Sorry, that's a bit light, but hopefully you can just about see that. The aim of the game of Monopoly is to buy as many houses as you can on the board so that you are the one person that owns pretty much everything, and then you can charge the other players for staying at your houses. So it's all about being the one player. This here is a monk. This word also has to do with 1 because monks have to spend a lot of time alone, so when they're the one person, the only person in the room or in the building. And then finally, in the bottom left, we have this item here, which is a monocle. You may know the word spectacles already, which is just another word for glasses, like glasses that you wear on your face. So spectacles when you have 2 bits of glass in your face, and a monocle is when you have 1. So if you have a look at these prefixes, you might be able to spot the 2 prefixes that we can use for the word 1. So we've got unicycle, and some of you may have made the link to a bicycle. So a bicycle has 2 wheels, a unicycle just has 1. So we've just changed the prefix to uni, and a unicorn, it just has 1 horn. And then we've got mono kind of is in monk, that is where it comes from, and then monopoly. So uni and mono are the 2 prefixes that go with 1, and you can also use prime. I don't have a picture for prime, so hopefully you'll forgive me, but if you think about primary school, that's the first kind of school that you go to. So 1 goes with uni, prime and mono. Okay, let's look at the words that relate to the number 2 and see if we can figure out that one. So here we have the bicycle. And this boy, if we're looking at what he's holding to his face, those are called binoculars. The root ocular has to do with eyes, by the way. And then we have 2 women dancing. We could call them a dancing duo. So have you managed to figure out the prefixes for 2 yet? They are bi, bicycle has 2 wheels, binocular, you've got the 2 bits of glass to look out of, and then du also means 2 of something. If people are singing, 2 people are singing together, then we could call that a duet. And there are lots of other words that have bi and du in them. If you can think of a few, then pop them in the comments because I would love to see them. Maybe there are some words that I haven't thought of at all. Right, so the number 2 needs to go with du or bi. Now number 3. So we've had a unicycle, we've had a bicycle with 2 wheels, and a 3-wheeled cycle is called a tricycle. So 3 goes with tri or tertius. Now, you don't hear the tertius very much, but sometimes when people go to university, so the 3rd type of school they go to, sometimes people call that tertiary education, it's like the 3rd level. Tri, you'll have heard of a lot more. So, for example, triangle has 3 sides, or a tripod that you put a camera on that has 3 feet on it to help it to stand up. Now number 4, so what is the name for a 4-sided shape? So not a square or a rectangle, but any 4-sided shape. We could call that a quadrilateral. Quadrilateral. So let's look for quad. Here we go. And what you might have noticed with these prefixes is that we use them for what are called multiple births. So when 2 people are born at the same time, we call those twins. When 3 people are born at the same time, 3 babies with the same mum and dad, they are triplets. And 4 children are called quadruplets. So 5 children would be, they would be quintuplets. And so that's one prefix that means 5, but there's another prefix like a 5-sided shape. 5-sided shape is a pentagon, so 5 goes with pent or quin. So quintuplets, pentagon, that's how we use them. Okay, 6 goes with hex, as in hexagon. Sometimes we put an S at the beginning, so if you have sextuplets, that's 6 children born at the same time. Or a hexagon is a 6-sided shape. 7 goes with hept or sept. Hept or sept. 8 goes with, if you think of an 8-sided shape, we do have a 7-sided shape called a heptagon as well. 8-sided shape is an octagon. 9-sided shape is a nonagon. We can use non or nov. I know the board's getting messy now, but hopefully you can keep up. You might want to write these in a list at home, so they're all next to each other. And then we have 10. So a 10-sided shape is called a decagon. Just going to go through that. When a measurement is split into 10, we also can use the 10 prefix dec. So if you have 1/10 of a litre, for example, then you could call that a deciliter. So that just means 1/10 of a litre. We can also use litres and metres to help us to figure out the thousand prefixes. So what do we call 1/1000th of a litre? We would call it a milliliter. So milli is one of the prefixes that we use for 1,000, milli, like that. And there's another one, I'll just show you the images that go with it. So here, this says it's 8 kilometres. So 1,000 metres make a kilometre, which is where we get the kilo part from. So kilometre means 1,000. And then this picture over here is a picture of a millipede. Millipede, pede means foot, and milli means 1,000. So it doesn't actually have 1,000 feet, but that's where the name comes from. It looks like it has 1,000 feet. So now we know that 1,000 can go with milli or kilo, as in millimetre, milliliter, and kilometre, and kilogram. And finally, the only one left is many. So there are a couple of prefixes that just mean many of something. They are poly and multi. For example, if something is multicoloured, it has many colours. If you have a polygon, then that is a shape with many sides. I'll just write polygon here so you can see the spelling. Polygon is a shape with many sides, any number of sides over 3, or 3 or over, I should say. Now that we know some of the numerical prefixes, and by the way, do try and write these down somewhere and revise them because they really will help you with other words. But now we're going to use those prefixes to help us to figure out the definitions of some new words. These words have nothing to do with maths really, but they do relate to numbers in some way. So let's have a look. Our first 2 words relate to the number 1. That's why we've got the mono prefix, and even though it's not there in its entirety, we've got the uni prefix, both of which meant 1. So monopolise, this does kind of relate to the board game for those of you that have played it. I'll explain the link in a second, but I'll give you some example sentences so you can figure out what monopolise means. So the first one is, you must allow your brother to watch his favourite shows too. You can't just monopolise the remote control. And then also, one parent asked lots of questions at parents' evening and monopolised all of the teacher's time. So we're talking about monopolising the remote control, you have to share it with your brother, and if someone asked lots of questions, they monopolise the teacher's time. So what do you think that could mean? And it has something to do with 1. So it means one person isn't sharing what they have, they're keeping it all to themselves. So one person is taking everything. The reason that this relates to the board game, if you're wondering, the board game Monopoly, is because the aim there is to own everything and be the one person that controls everything. So you are monopolising all of the locations on the board in that case. Okay, so let's go to the definition. It's to keep something all to yourself. To keep something all to yourself. So something like an object. It wouldn't be like a secret or something, keeping that to yourself. So we often talk about monopolising someone's time and just, monopolising when you're not sharing. You can monopolise a conversation as well, by the way. So if you're the only person talking, there's one person talking, then you are monopolising the conversation. One word that I didn't put here, but it does kind of relate to monopolising the conversation, is if someone is having a monologue. So mono again, one. And there's such a thing as a dialogue, which is when two people are talking. So a monologue is just one person talking, a dialogue is two people talking. This video is kind of a monologue because I haven't got anyone to answer back, so it's just one person talking. Okay, let's talk about unanimous. Now, the example sentence is, the children voted unanimously to go on a school trip rather than taking an exam. What do you think? How many children do you think would vote to go on a school trip rather than taking an exam? Maybe all of them? So they vote like one person. They make one decision, they have one mind. So the meaning here is when a group of people completely agree. So if someone said, put your hand up if you want to go on a school trip, and every single person put up their hand, then it was a unanimous decision. And unanimous when a group of people completely agree. And as usual, it's a good idea if you can write down these words and the definitions. Just be careful with your spelling, make sure you copy it properly, because that will help you to remember this in future. On to words that have something to do with the number 2. We've got our by and du prefixes, which have something to do with 2. And the first 2 words I think we should actually discuss together because they're similar in meaning and often confused. So let's talk about that. Now, biannual, so we know the prefix means 2. Annual, so if something happens annually, it happens every year or once a year. That's because annum means year in Latin. So anything with annum, then that will be to do with a year. So biannual, if annual means a year and bi means 2, what do you think that stands for? That would be twice a year. Now biennial is a slight change to that, and biennial actually means happening once every 2 years. So biannual, it could be every 6 months or something, so twice a year. Biennial, you have to wait 2 years until the next one. So just write that down. Biennial happening every 2 years, biannual happening twice a year. We use the word biannual far more than we use biennial. And then we have bilingual. So lingua is to do with language. See, lingua and language sound similar. So if you are bilingual, then that means that you speak 2 languages. So able to speak 2 languages fluently. If you are fluent, then you speak it like it's your first language. So you speak it without hesitating and you understand the language well. That's when you're fluent. And then finally we have duplicitous. Now you may have heard the word two-faced. So if someone's being two-faced, then they may act one way with one person and then act a completely different way with someone else. Or they may be nice to someone's face and then mean behind their backs. So two-faced and duplicitous mean virtually the same thing. So when you are duplicitous, you may trick people and act a certain way just to get your own way. So you will be sly, cunning, and deceitful. So for the definition, we have deceitful, likely to trick people. So you would have to watch out if someone seems to be duplicitous. So write that down as well. That's quite a good word to know if you're describing a character. And then let's just look at this question at the bottom. Now remember I said you can form words using number prefixes and guess what a word means. So we found out earlier that biennial means happening every 2 years. And we know that bi is the prefix that means 2. So can you guess the word for happening every 3 years? Why don't you put your answer in the comments and I will comment in there as well and tell you the answers. So what you'll need is to take that 3 prefix that we talked about earlier. Remember 3 is in like triangle or tripod. And then you'll need to combine that with the root word here. and take off the to prefix. So a word for happening every 3 years. And one of my pupils actually was able to guess the word for happening every 4 years using the prefix. So an event like the Olympics or the World Cup, that would be happening every 4 years. So there's a word for that as well, and you can put that in the comments too. Now, in case you were wondering, there is a word for speaking 3 languages or speaking many languages. Remember, the prefix for 3 was tri. So for able to speak 3 languages fluently, we take off that to prefix and change it to 3. So you are trilingual if you are able to speak 3 languages fluently. And if you're able to speak many languages, multi was one of the many prefixes. So you could say you are multilingual. After you can speak about 4 languages fluently, we'd really just say multilingual rather than continuing to specify the number in the prefix. So bilingual, trilingual, and multilingual. Our last slide is going to be about words for different periods of time, but remember, if you have learned something so far in this video, don't forget to tell me in the comments and also like this video so that I know that it's helped you. Finally, we have words that relate to a period of time. So some of you may know these, or you may have heard the words and you can't quite remember how many years they relate to, so I thought we'd just go over it to make sure that you know, because these come up quite a bit. We have decade. Remember we talked about the dec prefix earlier. Dec meant 10, as in decagon. So a period of a decade would be a period of 10 years. So you could say that happened a decade ago, it happened 10 years ago, over a decade, or it's been several decades since something happened. Now, century. We didn't talk about the cent prefix earlier, but it does come up quite a bit. One cent word that you may know is centimetre. Now, that's called a centimetre because there are 100 centimetres in a metre. Likewise, if you talked about centilitres, then there would be 100 centilitres in 1 litre, or you could say it's 100th of a litre. And there are coins. Where you live, you might call pennies cents. So in Europe, where you have the euro, then there are 100 cents in 1 euro, and in America there are 100 cents in $1. And that all relates to the number 100. So a century is a period of 100 years. And finally, millennium. We talked about milli earlier, as in millipede, even though they don't actually have 1,000 legs, and milliliter. So millennium is all to do with 1,000, so that's a period of 1,000 years. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you know as soon as the next video comes out. And you can head over to another video on our channel if you want to keep the learning going today. If you've learnt new words from this video like duplicitous or monopolise, then please do give us a like or write us a comment so we know that it's helped you. See you soon.